The rain hammered the sidewalks of Portland, Oregon, drumming against cardboard and asphalt like an endless warning. Inside a half-collapsed box, two newborn Labrador puppies writhed, their tiny cries almost swallowed by the storm. Their bellies rose and fell in shallow waves, searching for warmth that wasn't there. Across the alley, a pair of golden eyes glowed in the shadows, a tabby cat, ribs showing through his wet fur, moving with hesitant precision. His hunger was obvious, his steps shaky. Yet what he did next silenced even the wind. Instead of sniffing for scraps or darting away from the downpour, the cat padded toward the box. His paws sank into the soggy cardboard as he lowered himself among the trembling pups. One by one, he pressed his lean body against theirs, curling his tail protectively around them. The pups squealed, startled, until they felt his warmth. Then the smallest began to nuzzle into his chest, clinging to him as though he had always been their mother. Lightning ripped across the sky, flooding the alley with white light. For a fleeting moment, the scene looked almost unreal. A starving stray cat lying inside a drenched box, licking the heads of two whimpering puppies. Steam rose faintly from their mingled bodies as his tongue worked in small, rhythmic strokes, drying their damp fur the way only instinct could teach. His own whiskers trembled, yet he kept grooming, even when his ribs ached from pressing too close. From the edge of the street, a couple, walking under an umbrella, stopped in their tracks. They couldn't quite believe what they were seeing. The man tightened his grip on the handle, eyes wide, while the woman brought her hand to her mouth. They expected the cat to leave, to vanish into the night as most strays do. Instead, he curled tighter, purring faintly, a fragile motor drowned out by thunder. The puppy's cries grew softer, less desperate, as warmth seeped into their tiny bodies. Their paws searched for his belly, their muzzles nudging for milk that would never come. Still, the cat endured their searching, tucking his chin down as if to shield them from the cold. His tail twitched, not in irritation, but in a strange kind of vigilance. He seemed to understand their helplessness in a way no passerby ever could. The woman whispered that they should help, her voice shaking with urgency, but the man hesitated. Approaching too fast could frighten the cat away, leaving the pups to freeze. They stood, torn, watching the unlikely guardian stand his ground against the storm. For every second they delayed, the scene grew heavier, like something ancient was unfolding in that alley. Water pooled beneath the box, creeping closer to the pups' fragile bodies. The tabby shifted, lifting them slightly with his thin frame, refusing to let the rising damp touch their skin. He moved with the instinct of a mother who has done this 100 times before, though no one could guess where such tenderness had been learned. His ears twitched with every crack of thunder, but his resolve only seemed to harden. And there, in that forgotten corner of the city, an unspoken promise took root. The cat was not leaving. He would keep his post no matter the cold, no matter the hunger clawing at his own belly. People might walk past and shake their heads, but the box in the rain had just become more than a refuge. It had become a cradle of survival. And nobody imagined that this cat would never step away again. At dawn, the storm had eased, but the box was soaked through, sagging under the weight of the night. Volunteers from a local shelter, answering a call from the couple, crouched carefully beside the alley. They carried towels, crates, and the weary patience of people used to heartbreak. Yet when they reached for the pups, the tabby cat lifted his head and let out a low, guttural sound. It wasn't loud, but it was sharp enough to make every hand freeze. The smallest volunteer whispered that the cat was protecting them, not threatening. His green eyes narrowed, ears pressed flat, body arched over the puppies like a fortress. Every hair along his spine seemed to say the same thing: "They're mine." When one of the pups whimpered at the sudden movement, the cat immediately lowered his head, licking its tiny ear as if to reassure. The message was undeniable. He wasn't just keeping them warm, he had claimed them. The volunteers glanced at each other, unsure of what to do. They had come expecting to scoop up 2 abandoned puppies, not to negotiate with a starving cat who had taken on the role of mother. One man tried sliding a towel under the box, but the tabby's growl deepened, rattling through his thin chest. The puppies stirred, sensing the tension, their cries rising again. The air thickened with urgency. Finally, one woman murmured softly, laying her hand against the wet cardboard. "All right," she said, more to the cat than to her colleagues. "We'll take you all." She didn't know why she said it. It simply felt wrong to separate them. Slowly, with careful movements, they lifted the box into a carrier, the tabby still crouched over the pups. His tail flicked once, but he never moved aside. At the shelter, a clean blanket replaced the soaked cardboard. Bowls of food and water were set nearby, yet the cat refused to leave the puppy's side. He sniffed the kibble, then turned back, licking the pups before taking a single bite for himself. He ate sparingly, then returned immediately to his vigil. Each time a hand reached into the crate, he pressed closer to the puppies, as if to remind the humans that this was his family now. Days blurred into nights, and the routine deepened. The tabby groomed the pups until their fur glistened, nudged them toward the shallow dish of formula the volunteers prepared, and curled around them after each feeding. He gave up sleep for watchfulness, shifting them with his paws when they wandered too far. In his quiet, stubborn way, he was teaching them how to survive. What no one expected was how quickly the puppies began to imitate him. They patted clumsily after the swish of his striped tail, their ears perked at the sound of his purr. When he sharpened his claws against the wooden edge of the crate, the pups pawed awkwardly at the same spot, as if learning the language of another species. At feeding times, one even tried to lap like a cat, tongue flicking with messy determination. The staff began to film the odd little family, unable to keep the story to themselves. Visitors came to see the cat who refused to let go of his puppies, and every time the room filled with whispers of wonder. Yet none of those visitors knew what was coming. Because weeks later, when the puppies finally grew strong enough to run, something happened that no one at the shelter would ever forget. And what unfolded next left everyone in tears. Weeks turned into months, and the once fragile puppies had grown sturdy legs and playful jaws. Their coats, now golden and thick, shimmered under the sunlight streaming through the shelter's windows. Yet despite their size, they never strayed far from the striped figure who had guarded them since the storm. The tabby cat, no longer skeletal, sat upright with quiet dignity, his gaze tracking their every move. They weren't just puppies anymore, they were his. When volunteers opened the play yard gates, the Labradors bounded out, tumbling into the grass with clumsy joy. But within moments, they circled back, pressing against the tabby who had padded out after them. He sat patiently, enduring their enthusiastic nudges, even when their weight nearly toppled him. When one barked too loudly, startling itself, the cat gave a firm swipe of his paw, not to hurt, but to guide. The yard filled with laughter from the staff, but underneath it all was awe. They weren't watching animals at play. They were watching a family. One afternoon, a family arrived at the shelter looking to adopt. Their eyes lit up at the sight of the Labrador puppies, so full of life and promise. Papers were drawn, questions asked, the usual rhythm of adoptions. But when the time came to separate the pups from their feline guardian, something happened. The puppies dug their paws into the floor, whining, their eyes darting back to the tabby. He, in turn, walked directly between them and the door, tail puffed, spine rigid, as if daring anyone to try. The room went silent. The volunteers, who had seen countless adoptions, exchanged looks heavy with understanding. This wasn't an ordinary bond. The puppies leaned against the tabby, pressing their warm bodies into his side until he began to purr, a deep, rolling sound that seemed to calm them instantly. The visiting family watched, their expressions softening. They had come for puppies, but what they saw was something far greater. After hushed discussions, a decision was made that few shelters could ever manage, but none would regret. The adoption papers were rewritten, and instead of 2, 3 lives would be leaving together. The tabby cat, once a starving stray, was granted the title he had already claimed long ago: father, protector, family. The day they left the shelter, the sight stopped people in their tracks. 2 golden puppies, prancing with clumsy joy, tails wagging like banners in the wind, and between them, a striped cat, walking with measured grace, his head held high. The puppies bumped against him, their excitement spilling over, and he accepted every shove, every lick, every leap, as though it had always been this way. At home, the family shared updates with the shelter. Photos arrived of the 3 curled together on one bed, the pups sprawled with paws draped over their guardian, the tabby purring so loud it nearly shook the frame. Mealtime became a comedy of species, the puppies trying to lap milk as cats do, the cat stealing a bite of kibble meant for dogs. They mimicked each other until their differences blurred into something unimportant. And so the bond, born in a storm-soaked alley, only grew stronger. What began as survival had transformed into love that defied explanation. The street had not created orphans, it had created a family. The kind that didn't ask about bloodlines or species or the rules of nature, only about loyalty, warmth, and the courage to stay. Because in the end, they didn't need to be the same to belong together. They didn't need matching voices or matching faces or even matching instincts. All they needed was one heart willing to love and another willing to trust. And in that shelter, on that day, the world was reminded of something simple and eternal. Family is not given. Sometimes it is chosen.